response to the case study we were given regarding an internet use violation, presumably by a student. What we do know and don't have to presume about this case is that the district in which this occurred had high socioeconomic status of students and families. The teacher to whom this act occurred, or against, I suppose, her name was Miss Walker. She was pretty inexperienced as a teacher. The culture of the building and the community was that of high academic rigor. It was a source of pride for the community. However, this particular teacher, Miss Walker, in the eyes of some, had too high of expectations, and there were a lot of complaints about her expectations leading to lower grades for students. The principal of this building, we know he was highly respected in the community and has been awarded for his service. We also know that the principal, Dr. Forbes, did make suggestions to Ms. Walker on how to address some of the complaints and concerns that were shared for her teaching practices. The case also mentioned that she was unsuccessful with those, so we don't know much about what happened there, but just that she was unsuccessful with those suggestions. Then we also know that there was an anonymous email sent to Ms. Walker, had a link to a website that included a lot of derogatory comments about her. We know that she perceived this website as a threat to her life because she called Dr. Forbes and said that specifically. So we still need to know the contents of the website, what it said specifically. Of course, we want to know who is responsible for the website and the email. And we don't know the steps exactly that the teacher, Ms. Walker, has taken at the principal's suggestion to improve her practice and improve her relationships, I assume, with teachers and, or not with teachers, excuse me, with students and families. Some of the steps I would take if I were the principal in this situation: first and foremost, to consult with district leaders. Ms. Walker had called Dr. Forbes, the principal, that evening, and so if I were Dr. Forbes, I would call, if I could, that evening, maybe my supervisor at the district level. Some of the questions I would have was whether or not NEA would need to be involved to help support Ms. Walker, whether we needed to contact any law enforcement outside of our SRO or security resource officer, whether the district is allowed to or would do some sort of tracking from the email through an IT address, through IT measures of some sort. And then what recommendations might my supervisor have for me to take as the principal. And then just getting approval for any sort of communication that I might do. I know in my district, when principals send out sort of a sensitive, whether it's an email, that's typically how we do it, some sort of a message to families and parents, we usually need to get that approved. We have a communication department. That way we're sending out consistent and cohesive messages that don't create any more panic than necessary. So after I got some of those recommendations and support from the district level and my supervisors, I would meet with Ms. Walker as soon as I could. First and foremost, just to validate her feelings that this would be a very scary situation. Secondly, to challenge her perceptions. She made some assumptions about the students that she thought might have been behind this, and one particular student. And I would kind of challenge her thinking on that to make sure that she was being objective. Also, I would provide clear direction for her not to make accusations to the student, regardless of her perceptions or assumptions. But that would be counter to her role as a teacher. She cannot make accusations to students of something so serious. And then just reassure her as a teacher and a person that support from me as the principal and other staff members in the district will continue for her so that she can feel safe and that her concerns are addressed. And I would assign our SRO or security resource officer to kind of check in with her as much as possible that next day or two right after this happened at the school days, so that she can know that she is secure and safe in the school building. Next, I would contact our law enforcement if necessary, and if this was something that was I was encouraged to do by my supervisors. first I would get some guidance from our SRO. I find that SROs typically work pretty closely with the buildings that they're in, and that provides a great source of comfort for staff and students. So it's often not perceived as a threat as it maybe would be outside of the school setting. And then working with the SRO, we would assess whether any other law enforcement involvement is needed. Um, and again, like I mentioned that earlier, the support for Ms. Walker from the SRO so that she has that feeling of safety and security at school. Next, communicating with the staff. It's really important in these kinds of sensitive situations that we all get together face to face, hold a brief staff meeting, whether it's just for 5 minutes before school the next day, as soon as possible, before all word gets out and people start communicating myths and perpetuating those. So I would hold that brief staff meeting and communicate the facts, just the facts, only what we know. I would ask teachers and staff for their alertness. Perhaps they might overhear something, students talking, that might help us find whoever did this. And also direct them, just like I did with Ms. Walker, not to make accusations, that's not our job. We're also here to protect all students and their reputation. So I would direct them very clearly not to do such things. Also working with them on how to not create panic. And when they hear maybe students talking about this and the story gets out of proportion, how to bring that back down to reality and reassure the students that everyone's safe and that we're supporting them. And then for me as the principal to reassure staff that they're supported here, not only by me, our SRO, but district personnel who we're working with as well. Next, communicate with the students. I would target just the students in Miss Walker's classes, but I would not choose any particular students to pull in at first, at least. With the SRO, I would plan to visit each of Miss Walker's classes that day. And in each of those classes, we would simply introduce a method of reporting that would be anonymous. We would tell them briefly, only in child-friendly terms, what we were concerned about, and that we are looking to them for some tips that they might have. So we would ensure that they know whatever they report would be anonymous. And then reinforcing our expectations as a school, what our vision is of having a civil culture and environment for all. So reinforcing that it's their job to help us carry that out to both teachers and fellow students. And once again, reassuring them of the support from staff and district level and law enforcement if necessary. Then it's really important to communicate with those parents whose children we talk to that day. The kids might come home and talk to parents about that, and if we haven't warned them or just given them the facts, the story may have gotten out of hand before it got to parents. So I would just convey that same message as it was given to students that day, report that myself, the principal, and the SRO visited each class, why we did that, and what we expected of students at this time. Again, like I mentioned before, I would get consultation from our district communication department before sending that out, but that would be my plan. After all of this unfolds, I would definitely need to be following up with Ms. Walker, probably doing so many times between while the whole action was unfolding. But after it's solved, I think Ms. Walker and I would need to debrief what was going on, what happened. I would really like to hear her personal reflection of what happened, and then personal on how her practices might improve just in general to build better relationships with her students. Being careful not to accuse her of having harmful relationships with students that might have led to something like this, because there's no excuse for this kind of harassment. However, just using this as an opportunity for growth and developing an improvement plan for her. Following up with staff would be very important, debriefing them, addressing any of the concerns that they may have heard throughout the process, of course thanking them for their action in this incident, and reinforcing our values, kind of reestablishing that this is who we are, this is our vision, and we support each other. These resolutions that I put forward do have benefits to all students. First and foremost, by building trust and faith in their school leaders. So we were doing that by avoiding any student defamation. I instructed clearly the teachers not to make any accusations, and hopefully that built trust for the students. Also by safeguarding the well-being of any potential whistleblowers by having that anonymous way to report. Demonstrating that the threatening acts are not tolerated in our school, and hopefully that leading to more comfort in future reports of bullying. Secondly, our resolution benefits all students by promoting the well-being for not only our teacher, Ms. Walker in this case, but all students as well. And we're doing that by working through her improvement plan to balance academic rigor with realistic expectations. And by appropriate self-care, I mean managing stress and knowing what priorities to set. Also working to improve relationships among Ms. Walker and her students and their parents. And we're doing that for many reasons, but one of them being that she has very wonderful teaching techniques, it sounds like, and that many students can benefit from her high level of academic rigor. So we would like to have other students be interested in taking her classes in the future, and having those improved relationships lead to that. My personal reflection from this case was very relatable to me. My district is very similar to this. I was discouraged at the focus of the community on that competition. They were very worried about grades being lowered by taking this hard class over the learning process and having being prepared for future things. That's discouraging to me. I was disappointed at the unsuccessful attempts at improvement, and it sounded like perhaps both Dr. Forbes and Ms. Walker could have worked a little more strategically on improving some of the concerns that have been reported prior to this harassment incident. And honestly, I was a bit annoyed at what seemed to be kind of an overreaction by Ms. Walker. While I can't imagine being in that situation, it didn't seem as if there were actual threats to her life, and it seemed like she kind of took it to that next level, whereas maybe it didn't need to be taken to that level. There's still unresolved issues in this case. The focus that we have on grades over learning, perceptions of other teachers, that could be something that's lingering, and then Ms. Walker's reputation, of course. So the way I demonstrated integrity and ethics in this, we're seeking help at the risk of damaging my own reputation, the fact that I needed help as a principal. Keeping necessary parties informed of the facts only, maintaining no crisis and no panic. And then, despite her sensitive state of mind, I had to warn Ms. Walker of the liability that she might incur if she were to accuse students. So that was a ethical act that I would do. And then treating others fairly. I would avoid the student accusations and potential defamation. That's treating students with dignity. Acknowledging Ms. Walker's level of fear. Even though I may have been annoyed by it, acknowledging that as treating her with dignity. Maintaining the anonymity of reporting students, of course, is treating them fairly and with respect. I demonstrated ethics. The American Association of School Administrators, many of their ethical codes align with our standards that we've been studying. So implementing the laws of avoiding defamation, doing the due process where students were informed what might happen by us visiting their classes and informed how to report their concerns. And then just supporting that fundamental value for student well-being through all of our actions. And then my own personal ethics that were revealed through this case study, promoting that safety and emotional security being number one before any learning can take place. Also building that culture of trust and connectedness between students, staff, parents, and community members. And those are the goals I strive to continue to meet when I'm practicing as an educational leader.